Side effect to the military coup in Haiti. Now thousands of desperate people are fleeing its shores, hoping for refuge in America. But because of a decade-long immigration policy, many of these Haitian refugees have been sent back to their country. Earlier this week, a federal judge in Florida ordered a stay in the forced return of the Haitians, and there are now nearly 3,000 refugees who have been picked up at sea, many of whom are waiting for a decision that will decide their fate. Joining us from the Coast Guard base in Miami Beach, Florida, is Rear Admiral Robert Kramick. He is commander of the 7th Coast Guard District. And good morning, Admiral.
Good morning, Joan.
Why don't you give us the latest update? What are the latest numbers, just the numbers of refugees that have been picked up?
Well, Joan, I just returned late last night from the Windward Pass, where I visited my cutters that are on patrol there. And in the last 3 weeks, we've interdicted over 43 Haitian vessels and rescued over 2,800 Haitians.
Now, where are all of these refugees being held now, and what are the conditions like that they're living under?
Well, up until Monday, I had to keep all the refugees aboard Coast Guard cutters, and it created quite a crisis because the cutters were full of Haitians to the extent that I couldn't continue operations. On Monday, I was allowed to repatriate some of the Haitians to Port-au-Prince, but now a judge has placed a temporary restraining order on that action, and I'm filling up the cutters again.
Am I correct in that some of them are in Guantanamo Bay in Cuba?
Yes, we had such an emergency situation with so many people on the ships. We've asked the Navy for help, and we've been able to leave some of the Haitians in Guantanamo Bay. And I was there yesterday while we discharged 2 cutter loads worth of Haitians onto a Navy vessel.
I read that 100 of them that were rescued yesterday was from a boat or a ship that was rapidly sinking. What are the conditions on these boats that the refugees are coming over on?
Well, it's very, very serious, and that's why I call it a crisis. These boats are 20 to 40 feet in length, and some of them have over 200 Haitians on board. They're simply stacked up on top of each other. The vessel has no freeboard. They're taking on water and foundering in the seas, and the conditions now are very rough. In fact, the conditions out there yesterday when I was visiting the cutters were marginal even for getting on and off the flight decks with helicopters. 30 to 35 knots of wind, 10-foot seas with breaking surf on the top, and we're very, very concerned about that. And I know the weather that's predicted for coming up is not good. Admiral, thank you very much. We're going to be joined now from Washington by Representative Charles Rangel of New York. He opposes the forced return of Haitian refugees to their country. And also joining us from Washington is Dan Stein, Executive Director of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Congressman Rangel, our government has stood by this policy of repatriation and returning the Haitians to their country on the grounds that they were fleeing because of economic conditions and not because of political reasons. Do you object to that?
I certainly do. But that's not the issue that I've been addressing in the last couple of days. It really doesn't make any difference to me now whether they're political or whether they're economic refugees. The fact is that we have thousands of people on the high seas, children, pregnant women, and we're returning them to a hostile government. It's a ragtag, vicious army that not only overthrew a democratic regime, but they have been condemned by the UN, by President Bush, by the Organization of American States for their random searching out and shooting of all of the supporters of Aristide. And of course, being poor and black doesn't help you in terms of our foreign policy as relates to Haiti. And all I'm saying is that we can reform the law, but at this time, let's exercise some compassion. And if we can't take care of all of them in the United States, and there's no reason why we can't, the president should be on the telephone calling friendly countries and asking them to not send these people back to what can be certain death.
Dan Stein, do you disagree?
Well, I think our hearts, everybody's heart goes out to the people of Haiti, and we hope that they're able to restore their democratically elected head of state, Jean-Baptiste Aristide. But at the same time, we do need to support the president at this critical juncture. We do not need, and we cannot sustain, another uncontrolled boat lift situation like what we had in 1980. That boat lift brought 100,000 people to Florida, cost taxpayers $1 billion in the first two years alone. We do need to work to try to sort out those who can show bona fide political persecution, which is a small percentage of them, and at the same time either repatriate them or get the help of the other nations in the area, Belize, Honduras, Costa Rica, to share the load. It's a critical juncture right now, and the signals we send will determine whether or not we are able to manage the situation or wind up with a mass exodus from Haiti, which we cannot sustain.
Congressman Rangel, I just heard you say it doesn't help to be black and poor when it comes to immigration, and we've heard the charges of racism before. You feel that that's an element here?
This is the only country that we have an interdiction treaty with. This is the only country that we go to the high seas, search, look for them, pick them up, and return them to the government. And this is an immoral and almost illegal arrangement that we made with the de Villiers government that was really a dictatorship. But be that as it may, now what we're trying to do is to, after we condemn the contemptuous military, then we take these people and return them to this dangerous situation. I have said, and no one can deny, if these people had come here from Europe, and we only talked about 2,000 or 3,000 people, we would not turn our backs on them, and we would not send them back to the dangerous situation that everyone agrees exists in Haiti. But, you know, we have organizations now that are saying that once their families have come in under immigration policies that were considered to be liberal and fair then, now we should really bring down the curtain and stop anybody else from coming. But if you take a look at those immigration laws, they run against people of color, and they run against specifically the Haitians. What I'm saying is, whether you're black or white, Jew or Gentile, at this time we should really just have some compassion for these people and open up our doors, open up our hearts, and let them in. We should not go through a Thanksgiving wondering about the lives of these people that are tossed at sea.
Dan Stein, are we treating them as an exception?
Well, those are excellent sentiments, but the fact is that U.S. law has not been discriminatory. The overwhelming majority of people who've gotten political asylum and even immigration laws have been people who are minorities or racial or ethnic minorities. 100,000 people have immigrated legally from Haiti in the last 10 years. Our laws are not discriminatory. The question is, will the rule of law be sustained? Will this process be orderly? We can run, for example, a screening program in Port-au-Prince to determine who is a legitimate political refugee. We do need to make sure we do not return people who will be harmed, but we have to be consistent across the board in not fomenting a massive exodus that's completely uncontrolled, that we cannot afford. Our nation, Miami, the unemployment rate's above the national average. This kind of an influx is enormously disruptive and very expensive. For America at large, this country is going to be facing this kind of situation in the future when you're adding 100 million people to the world population every year, 1 billion people a decade. Increasingly, people are going to be surging to the U.S., to the European nations, to the OECD nations, and we've got to stand together to deal with these kinds of influxes.
Well,
all right, Dan, I got to jump in here.
You may be right, but I tell you one thing, in the short run, these people may die on United States Coast Guard vessels, or they may die in Haiti, and that the blood will be on our hands.
All right, Congressman Rangel, I'm sorry I got to jump out here. Dan Stein, thank you both very much.